Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right.
How are you?
I'm good. How are things there? Also, where are you?
I live in Raleigh, North Carolina.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
Uh,
So I'm sitting here. And,
I'm sorry.
what was
What?
that?
Didn't
I'm just
something
sitting.
horrible just happen there? No, I'm
Nothing.
thinking of somewhere else.
Yeah. The only thing that just more people being dumb in the face of the pandemic, which is
Well, we have no dumb people out here, so I wouldn't know
yeah.
about.
Yeah. Well. Well, thanks for agreeing to talk to me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, when I talked to you for my book, which is part of the reason why I'm doing these little videos now, is because the book came out during all this really cool stuff, and the fantasy book tour that I wasn't going to be able to do anyway, even if there wasn't a pandemic, it isn't going to happen. So I have to take matters into my own hands and let people know that I'm alive and got this book, and that you're in it, and about 40 other people are in it. And
You have to go grab people by the lapels at the supermarket, make them understand.
Really, yeah, the supermarket that is the internet.
Yes.
But when I talked to you though for the book, that's when you revealed that you too were working on your own book, which has been out for a while, which is called Mutations. So I'm kind of curious about your book. Like, there it is. I thought it was a very good book. I was very entertained by the whole thing. What I like about the book a lot is that you're very non-sentimental, but you still have a really strong enjoyment of the music, which is pretty much at the end of the day, that's kind of that's how I feel too. I feel much more comfortable talking about how much I like the music instead of super cool glory days and us versus them and all that kind of stuff. And you don't really get into that. And
I'm sentimental about it. I'm just not sentimental about my part of it. And I'm able to disguise the other bits of sentiment. I'm probably more sentimental than I come off. But about myself, no.
You're not sentimental about your own contributions to whatever that kind of stuff is. And yeah, well.
And most of the weird adventures I have had were bummers. They weren't good adventures,
Right.
I have a friend out here who maybe he was young when he did this, maybe out of high school, decided that he was gonna build a raft and sail down the Mississippi. This is in like 2008. And I think he was a teenager still. And everybody in his life said, please don't do this. You will die. And he's like, I'm doing it. I'm going to lead a life of adventure. And he took an airplane out there because he's from California, and got mugged on his way out of the airport. And they got everything. And so he just had to get a ticket and go home. And he realized on the flight home that he probably saved his own life. I don't know where I was going with that story, but that kind of feels like.
I was like wondering, what does this have to do with 80s hardcore? Somebody on
nothing. But you're going to edit it out, so that's fine.
Well, we'll see. Well, how did people like the book? How did it go over?
It seemed like it's been well received. There has been a small but steady surge of goodwill that feels very 1991-ish. I feel like I've had this experience before, where a lot. Sorry?
Kind of like that pre-Nevermind feeling?
It's more like, well, for me, 91 was followed by 93, where everyone tossed me in the garbage can. So, yes, but not the way you're meaning the word Nevermind. I've been getting a lot of letters about the book that are all really nice. The bad feedback that I get, which has not been much, is very predictable, and it is the good type of bad feedback that I would imagine any type of writer wants, where it's not addressed towards the writer, but towards the fans of the book. Like, I don't see what the big deal is with this guy, blah, blah, blah. So I guess that's fine. I don't know. It's confusing. I've had this experience a couple times in my life. I had it also when I was 12. When I was a published author, I wrote a book with a friend and got some press in Albany and had a lot of people telling me I'd done this really interesting thing. And I remember not knowing exactly what to do with that information.
Yeah.
So that's kind of happening again. And I'm sure you've had that position also, probably more than me.
No, I mean, it's the position of people having an opinion about you because you did something.
Mm-hmm.
I guess. I think that's kind of and also the perception that people have of you is always way different than your own perception of yourself. So that's always
Sure.
funny. Yeah.
Now, I remember you and I talked about this. I want to say the first time that we met in person in North Carolina in 2004, where we were talking about that 7 Seconds record cover, and you had said that was the thing that you were primarily known for. Is that still the case, or have you kind of moved the boundaries on that?
I worked for the Melvins for 10 years. I'm not sure that might be a big strong candidate for that, but
yeah. I also got the impression that the Ryan Adams thing for you was a little bit like the Sick of It All thing for me. Is that your impression?
Well, maybe, except that I never played with music with Sick of It All and enjoyed it, and then disliked everything else that Sick of It All ever did. Did you ever play with Sick of It All?
I never did.
Like you weren't in the band or anything? I don't know anything about Sick of It All, to tell you the truth.
I read about it a little bit in the book. There was a radio debate that I did with them that has managed to attach itself to my life.
It's internet famous. It's
internet, for decades. All of us, whether you're in AOD or Born Against or whatever, like there's a little thing called bank robbery. You can flip the script on that in an afternoon and be famous for something else if you want. That's my opinion. Anytime the pressure of being jerk from Sick of It All radio debate gets to be too much to bear, I can just go out and rob a bank and become bank robber guy. So, I'm not sweating
it. It's I've never heard this. I mean, I've heard about the legendary you and Adam, the guitar player, brought fanzines and underlined passages. And did you bring like lyric sheets too to show them the error of their ways?
I'll bet. I have one memory from that incident that I've mostly blocked out of my mind, where I remember sitting down at the table in the radio station and spreading a bunch of documents out as if we were lawyers. And then instantly, like, as soon as that happened, the second realization was, oh shit, that doesn't have the dramatic effect that I thought it would. This maybe is not going to be like LA Law. Oops.
Yeah, especially and you're on the radio too, so it's not like anybody could see that, right, except for people Sick of It All. No, I don't know. I have about like 5 or 6 internet famous things that anybody could reference, I guess. And they're all equal in actual interest. They're not really that interesting, but they're like a good keynote for somebody that wants to get down with your history or something like that.
Right. I feel like I should have a little asterisk here for the backstory between you and me for viewers, which
Please.
is, I just discovered 2 weeks ago. I mean, it's quarantine time, so I don't remember. 6 months ago.
Yeah,
I think it was a couple weeks ago.
It was probably 2 months ago. You discovered that you saw a show that Scared Straight was. Is this the story you're gonna?
Yeah. So my first hardcore show you were supposed to headline was Scared Straight headlining or Ill Repute?
Ill Repute were the bigger draw. So they were kind of like our godfathers. So they headlined. Yes.
And Ill Repute, the singer was child star, went to sing for Dead Kennedys later.
No, you're thinking of somebody else. The singer for Ill Repute's name was John. He did a really good Wendy O. Williams plasmatics impersonation of them counting to four in Japanese. But you're thinking of Brandon Cruz, the
I'm thinking of
original
Brandon.
announcer
Yeah,
now.
of course. Yeah.
It
So
all
I
just
just
went together.
discovered that you not only were you supposed to play that show, but that you did the art for that flyer, and that
Yeah.
was very. There was some cognitive dissonance. Here's the thing that I'm wondering. It seems like there have been other artists who have been inspired by your style. Have you found that you get credit for pieces of art that aren't your own? Like
All the time.
what's the comp? We Can Do Whatever We Want. I think that's Jason Traeger.
Jason Traeger.
I always thought that was your art.
I met Jason through Martin Sprouse.
Right.
And Jason had a very similar style. It was different than mine. He spent more time drawing his Maximum Rock and Roll scene reports from back then. But no, yeah, I've gotten credited for that kind of stuff for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that used to. So I've had that with Stake Mountain, and I'm just blanking on the name of the artist. Someone who kind of took my style and ran with it, and I was unnecessarily bent out of shape over that for a bit, and then I realized that it's not anything, it's fine if someone has a style that's close to yours, or they are inspired by your style. That can never be anything but a compliment. And I think I was a little bummed out for a while that I kept getting credit for that. But I mean, who cares? Like if people want to think that you've done something you didn't do, there's worse things to have happen. And also, I was thinking last night that I think this thing of cross-pollination art-wise happened a lot in the old hardcore scene. Who's the guy who drew Testicle Head?
Testicle Head.
Wait, I know this name. It's
he drew.
I know this. It's Lee
Ellington.
Ellington or Ellinson. And I would assume that a lot of people confused his art for Pusshead because it kind of it's not as detailed as Pusshead, but kind of it looks like something.
He had like a chainsaw. And he would just like kill everybody with a chainsaw.
Yeah. I think there must have been a bunch of that in that old world. I always, and I wanted to fit into Mutations. I'm really interested in the artists that never became nationally known artists. So there's obviously Raymond Pettibon and Winston Smith and maybe Mad Mark Rude. I guess he probably counts, right?
Mad Mark Rude, yeah. Pusshead, of course.
There's all these weird little regional artists that I tried for a while to fit into Mutations, at least in a footnote, and I just couldn't do it. Like
Vince Rancid.
Sorry?
Vince Rancid, the guy that did Screams for the Gutter, the cover of the band Raw Power.
Right. Oh, Christ. And where was he from?
I think he was from Ohio.
Okay, so my references for like the deep cut artists are all East Coast, like Kevin Crowley, who did art for The Abused. I'm imagining that that's a little out of your hardcore wheelhouse.
I never liked New York hardcore. I was I like that Urban Way 7-inch.
Yes.
And to this day, I don't understand the appeal of But if I was there and if that was the first stuff I ever heard, then I think I would understand completely.
Well, here's my take on it: is that New York hardcore? I'm pretty known as not being a huge fan of New York hardcore, but there's an element in it that was very cartoony, was very Bugs Bunny like, and so this artist from The Abused had a character who I think was called Captain Hardcore, and he was this inhuman weightlifter covered in veins. He was always exerting himself. He was never not in a state of exertion. And he had welder gloves, which later became a New York thing because that's what you wore when you got into fights.
He was bench pressing for the scene.
Yeah. And those are beautiful flyers, even though they're just, they're they're messed up emotionally. And then there was the guy who did he did those really amazing, these were also New York hardcore flyers. Like he one-upped Captain Hardcore. Wampum. Is that a name you've heard of? It's Wamp and then the letter M. Okay. So Wampum would do these flyers that were just these like inhuman pits of huge men crawling on each other. And it was just this biblical. It was like the Gustave Doré illustrations for Dante's Inferno. Just these really lurid scenes of skinheads like crawling all over each other, and everyone is just muscles. And at shows in New York, that would influence the tenor of the show. I've seen people stage dive off balconies and from like 30 stories up, things that were that weren't adhering to like human physics. It was Bugs Bunny physics. And that's, which, you know, surprise, if you advertise the show as this thing, like you're going to get people trying to reenact it. So that was the kind of stuff. There were others too. There was this might be in your circle. There was a guy who did flyers for the Anthrax, and I don't remember his name. And he did some stuff for 7 Seconds also, and he drew these cartoony guys with these incredible noses. These were like
Pat.
Who?
Pat.
I think that's it. Yeah, PHAT. But before that word was a thing. Yeah,
he did a lot of fanzine stuff.
Yeah. Did he have a fanzine, or he did stuff?
I think he was kind of like me. If you just wrote to, if anybody wrote to me, I would do anything for you, no questions asked, because I was just so excited to be a part of it. And I would see his stuff all the time.
So that's the John Crawford approach. I mean, he was the king of that, the guy who did Baboon Dooley, right? So we need to talk about John Crawford. What is your relationship with John Crawford?
Well, John Crawford wrote me once. I wrote him and I said something about, I like your stuff. And he said something about me going to church. And I think I read some interview with him where he said that he didn't like confessional cartoons because he felt like it was like people going to church to confess. And I guess that was a little dig at my well-meaning scene.
But his art was nothing but digs. It was just digs at everyone. And in a really real way, it was kind of beautiful. Even though I wound up making fun of him in my fanzine in this sort of elaborate fake John Crawford Baboon Dooley comic. And then he gave me exactly what I wanted, which was a little dig at me in one of his comics. But he really didn't seem to like anyone. And I remember if you did a fanzine, you would just get in the mail like a cold call. You would get some Baboon Dooley cartoons. And you could run them or not run them. And I remember I was really interested in that approach in high school. And I wanted to do that for my friend Jason, who was a really savant level gifted cartoonist, but just did stuff for our fanzine. And I said, look, I'll be like your manager, meaning really I'll just do what the Baboon Dooley guy does. And I'll send your comics out to every fanzine everywhere. And we'll make this into something. And he didn't like that idea, and that was ultimately his choice. At a certain point, I didn't want to push him. So, have you only had that one interaction with John Crawford?
Yeah. I had a few with Pushead, and the first one was good, and the second one, Timmy O'Hannon told me that he was bummed out at me because I wasn't spending enough time on my artwork. If he had said something like, "Man, you're okay, kid, but you need to spend more time on your artwork," I would have been like, yes, almighty Puss said you're right. I mean, he was right, for sure. He was a very accomplished inker, definitely.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of his art, but I certainly appreciate what he's capable of doing.
So you've had probably a lot of encounters like I've had, which I think also your book kind of touches on a little bit. I feel like, even though we haven't really talked about having oops kind of moments, I think in your day you probably had more than your fair share of oops, sorry. Yeah, I was just writing stuff down. It was supposed to be funny. I wasn't trying to offend anybody. I oops. Have you had your share of oops moments? But now you can't have an oops moment because of the internet. You know what I mean?
It's
You can't,
harder.
it's a lot
I
harder.
frequently think about how to outwit the internet and embarrass myself in ways that will remain private. And I managed to do it about a month ago. Utterly no details, but it wasn't good. Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to do in this book that I did, this is a side benefit, not a purpose of the book, was include pretty much all the bad stuff I've done as a way of sort of indemnifying myself in the future. And so I made sure that all those oops moments made it into the final draft, as opposed to the, like we were talking about with the artists. There were a lot of pieces that were pretty dear to my heart that at the end, I just ran out of time on this book, not for the publisher, but for me mentally, I couldn't continue. It was too hard to do it. Yeah, I thought that would be a worthy goal of mine. And also I don't like the tone of most, definitely books, but just the nostalgia that comes along with all this stuff, where people are not presenting their past as truthfully as they could. Not because I value the truth, I really don't, but just because it's boring.
It's real
the Harley
boring.
Flanagan autobiography delivers because he's had a really intense life. But if you're not Harley Flanagan, then that trick's not going to work. Certainly wouldn't have worked for me if I tried to glorify anything that I'd done. You do not have to like the Cro-Mags. I've only recently discovered that the Grateful Dead are a pretty interesting subject, and I do not care about that band. Well, that's not true. I do care about the Grateful Dead a lot. I hate them, their music. I really despise the music of that band.
I like two songs.
But I've read, okay, which songs?
Box of Rain, and I think a song called Bertha. That's it.
You could literally be making up those titles. Those are the corniest titles for songs ever.
They exist.
There was a really good profile in the New Yorker a couple years ago of one of the main tape archivists for the Grateful Dead. And when I finished it, I was so fascinated by that world that I almost, I was briefly like, do I like this band? What is this? And it's all it is just there's good stories hidden in there. And that's what the Harley Flanagan book is. You know about his childhood, right?
No, not really. I mean, I knew they played drums in a New York band when he was like 10 years old. And
yeah, but even before that, he was part of that, or he was on the periphery of that East Village scene. Allen Ginsberg did the foreword for a little book of poetry he did as a kid. So it's pretty much right out of the gate. It's a fascinating book. And I bet that anybody who does not care about the music would come away from it entertained. So that also informed Mutations a little bit, that I tried to write something that someone who didn't know about or care about any of this music or culture would still be interested in. I have no way of knowing if I succeeded in that, because from my vantage point, I'll never know because I'm the one who did it. Although occasionally I fantasize, like, wouldn't it be amazing to be in some really horrific accident, get a really bad head injury, and just have your memory be wiped, and then be able to go back and read things I've written just with a clear slate to see what I think of it. Maybe they'll have a drug for that in the future, like temporary Alzheimer's.
Well, cross your fingers. Maybe that could happen for sure.
Well, I'm sad that you didn't know John Crawford as a person. I think that I would love to know more about that guy and also what happened to him. And he's not someone that you could approach, he's just he seems like he would be too angry.
He doesn't have an online social media presence as a 60-year-old man. So
is he still alive? I feel like we all would have heard about it if something had happened, right?
Yeah. Well, I do remember that apparently his whole deal was he looked up to Tim Yohannan when Tim Yohannan was like a hippie or a yippie or whatever. I don't know what they're called anymore. And I think he was let down because he expected too much from Tim and whoever Tim was representing.
Yeah.
So a lot of it was like sort of sour grapes, and he, he probably just built them up the way a lot of people do. And then when these people don't meet your expectations, you got to tear them down. So I think that
he did the tearing down thing. He really put some elbow grease into it. That's what made it fascinating. He did what I'm sure must be a book's worth of cartoons, really fleshing out the stabbed in the back motif of every hardcore band from like 83 on.
it's more like from 85 on.
Okay, from 85 on. I was born in 69. I always thought that I was older than you, but I guess I'm not. You must be a couple of years older than me, right?
Yeah, I was born in 65.
Okay. So when did you start going to shows?
Well, the first show I was able to go to was in 1983, but I was kind of aware of the music for a year and a half before that. And then I was aware of the whole letter writing thing. So I just started sending my little idea of what going to a show would be like. And that's how all that stuff started. I just imagined what that stuff was like, and I would just draw it. And then when I finally did go to shows, it was like, well, that's kind of not really quite how it is, but that's kind of how it is. That's like a well-meaning idea of how it is.
Yeah. How do you go from your first show in 83 to being on a national tour in 85? For me, it took 5 years from my first show to being in a band.
Because the climate back then was still the climate where it didn't matter how good you were or how bad you were. It was still the climate of, and it was still the climate for you too. But it was still the climate of, if anybody shows up in our town doing something weird or whatever, we'll go see it. So even if it's like a, Mystic Records band with a 9-song 7-inch in 1985, we're going to spend 3 weeks touring with No Repute, and we're going to go to Lincoln, Nebraska, and a bunch of kids my age are going to be there, and I'm going to have pre-internet fame for 2 weeks because I wrote a lot of letters. That probably had something to do with it too.
Me too. Yep.
Yeah. So it wasn't because of any kind of talent. It was just, you see where you can
all right.
and then you just go, well, I can make friends if I do this, sure. Or something like that, It was very easy to tap into, as you know.
Yeah.
But the thing about Mutations is like there's so many books now about all that people's memories and stuff, and it's so long ago now, which is crazy. It's, 30, 40 years ago, and now everybody and their dad has a book. I have a book, you have a book, and it's like your book has a nice wrinkle to the idea of writing a book about that kind of subject matter, because it's just not this chest beating, the glory. There's like personal sentiment. And also, you're obviously a fan of the music. So when you describe DeCroizen in their first album the way you did in your book, it's like, that's exactly right. That's exactly what that record sounds like.
It took me a long time to it was like therapy, trying to re-access those earlier emotions, because there were all these layers of other things historically that have happened to me since then. Do you find that it takes you a while to work your way back to those original memories, like the original emotions that certain things inspired in you?
You mean the music?
Yeah.
I just liked the music. I thought the music was cool, but I wasn't really as angst ridden as anybody else, but it was just about, I just thought the music was good. And also I just thought, oh, this is more music alike. Like, I was just kind of about the music more than this is us, man. We're here today and this is us and we're the kids of today and all that kind of stuff that people like. And now everybody has a book, and it's like, I don't think I need to read another book about Washington, D.C., hardcore from the, the subject has been covered a little bit. You know?
I still hear, although less, and when I say hear, I mean read online, this myth that this world has been underdocumented and we have to save it from obscurity. What could be more over-documented than American hardcore?
I know,
Which
especially
is
now.
kind of daunting when you're trying to write a book about it. When I first told Adam that I was doing this, he said, "Oh, that's original." And I was like, "Oh, shit." And so it was kind of like when I was writing it, his face was right here, like
a disapproving, like a disapproving face going like this.
Not disapproving, just skeptical, like, do it right, buddy.
Do you like it?
I think so.
You didn't
yeah. I mean, me and Adam go way back. We have a complex relationship, and when you know someone that well for that long, yeah, I think he did. Yes.
You're not sentimental about the glory.
The glory.
Yeah.
The glory. Yeah.
The glory. Yeah, because I'll read some of that stuff and I'll just be like, well, I don't care that somebody's going out and they're gonna take on 10 rednecks and
it's the same thing as hearing about someone's high school life. It's not interesting to anyone except for the participants.
Right.
And no one cares how many football games you helped win back when you were in Pop Warner. I don't even know. Is Pop Warner football or baseball? I don't know.
I'm not a sports guy. I have no fucking idea.
Really? Good. Do you find that it is, let me rephrase that. I would think that it would be more and more of a challenge for you to convey the sensibilities of that era in your art, specifically in your comic art. Is that the case? That you have to really kind of work to make things translate for audiences now because there's so much?
Because there's so much of it now, and I already had mined all the memories I have of stuff. You know, I've already told all the stories I can possibly tell. So, yeah, it's not really hard at all because I'm not trying to convey anything because everybody says the same thing. Well, life before the internet was a lot different. You had to write letters.
Yeah, but there's more nuances to it than that. Even just the speech stuff.
Like what?
Well, the speech stuff. The sensibilities have changed so much. And also the implications of having a fully connected world. I don't think people totally process, like the fact that I always had to have little, what were they called? Calling cards, the like a prepaid card, and then I'd have to go find a payphone to call the next place about.
Right.
No GPS. So I was just lugging around one of those. I was about to show you the thing I lugged around, but I finally threw it out. It was like my 1998 Road Atlas, whatever.
Right.
I kind of remember throwing that out. Like, why do I own this? I'm not that sentimental a person. It's taking up this much space on my bookshelf.
Right.
Okay. Anyway, so you're saying that you don't feel that you need to.
Well, you know,
to work harder to communicate this stuff to people now.